At 8:30 on a freezing November night, the crew of Northwest Flight 305 felt the tail of their aircraft suddenly pitch upward. For hours, a quiet man in a business suit had held the plane hostage. Now the cabin behind them was silent. The rear staircase was open to the storm, and the man who called himself Dan Cooper was gone. So was a canvas bag containing $200,000. Below him was the black wilderness of southwest Washington. He had no helmet, no proper clothing, no clearly defined landing zone. Yet more than half a century later, investigators still cannot say whether he died in those woods or walked away from the only unsolved hijacking of its kind in American history. This is not only the story of a man who vanished, it is the story of the small decisions he made before the jump and the evidence he left behind. On November 24, 1971, the day before Thanksgiving, a man approached the Northwest Orient counter at Portland International Airport. He paid cash for a one-way ticket to Seattle under the name Dan Cooper. The flight was short, usually little more than half an hour. Witnesses described him as being in his mid-40s, around 6 feet tall, with dark hair, brown eyes, and an olive complexion. He wore a dark business suit, a white shirt, a narrow black tie, and a raincoat. Nothing about him demanded attention. He took a seat near the rear of the Boeing 727 and ordered a drink. Then he handed flight attendant Florence Schaffner a note. She initially placed it in her purse, assuming it was a phone number. The passenger leaned toward her and quietly told her she should read it. The note said he had a bomb and wanted her to sit beside him. When she did, he opened his attaché case just far enough to reveal wires, a battery, and red cylindrical objects. Whether the device was real has never been established, but in that cabin, it looked real enough. Cooper wanted $200,000 in $20 bills. He wanted 4 parachutes, 2 main chutes, and 2 reserves. He also wanted a fuel truck ready when the plane landed in Seattle. The request for 4 parachutes has often been interpreted as a warning. If authorities believed he might force a hostage to jump with him, they would be less likely to sabotage the equipment. That explanation is plausible, but it remains an inference. Cooper never announced that plan. While the aircraft circled Seattle, the 36 passengers were told that a mechanical problem was delaying the landing. On the ground, police collected the ransom from a Seattle bank. The serial numbers had been recorded. State troopers rushed to obtain parachutes from local sources. In the confusion, one of the reserve chutes delivered to the aircraft was a training device that had been sewn shut. Cooper either failed to recognize it or never intended to use it. The detail would later become part of the argument that, despite his knowledge of the aircraft, he may not have been an expert parachutist. After hours in the air, Flight 305 landed at Seattle-Tacoma Airport. The aircraft stopped in a remote, dark section of the runway. Flight attendant Tina Mucklow carried the money and parachutes aboard. Only after Cooper confirmed the delivery did he release the passengers and 2 flight attendants. He kept Mucklow and the 3-person cockpit crew. His instructions for the next flight were unusually specific. The plane would head toward Mexico City. It would remain below 10,000 feet, fly slowly, keep its landing gear down, and hold its flaps at 15 degrees. Most importantly, Cooper wanted the rear staircase lowered. The Boeing 727 was one of the few airliners with stairs built into the underside of its tail. That feature made it possible to leave the aircraft in flight without passing the wings or engines. The ransom had arrived in a canvas bank bag instead of the knapsack he requested. Cooper improvised. He cut suspension lines from one reserve parachute and used them to secure the money bag. Before Mucklow joined the crew in the cockpit, she saw him tying the ransom to his body. She was the last person known to have seen him. Flight 305 took off again at 7:36 that evening. The crew locked the cockpit door. Military jets followed at a distance, but the airliner's low speed and the poor weather made visual tracking difficult. A few minutes after takeoff, a warning light showed that the rear staircase had been activated. When the crew asked if Cooper needed assistance, he answered with a single word, no. Outside, the temperature was below freezing. Rain, sleet, and cloud obscured the ground. Cooper wore loafers and a business suit. The parachute he selected was an older military model that offered limited steering. He carried no visible helmet and had not requested protective clothing. Shortly after 8, the crew felt a pressure change and a noticeable oscillation in the aircraft's tail. Later tests using a Boeing 727 reproduced a similar movement when a weight left the rear staircase. Investigators used that moment to estimate where Cooper jumped. When the aircraft finally landed in Reno, the staircase was still down. Cooper, 2 parachutes, and the money were gone. The cabin became a crime scene. Investigators collected fingerprints and searched the seats and surfaces Cooper had touched. They recovered a black clip-on tie from J.C. Penney and its inexpensive tie pen. Years later, the tie produced partial DNA profiles, but it had passed through many hands before modern forensic precautions existed. The material has never conclusively identified the hijacker. Cooper also left cigarette butts in the ashtray. Those could have provided a cleaner DNA sample, but they were later lost. The original note was gone as well. Schaffner had copied its wording, but Cooper took the paper back before releasing the passengers. Search teams moved through the predicted landing zone near Ariel, Washington. They found no body, no parachute, and no ransom bag. The terrain was steep, forested, and wet. Even if the calculated zone was correct, a small object could disappear there for decades. Then, 7 years after the hijacking, a hunter found an instruction placard from the 727 rear staircase near the aircraft's route. It proved that material had been torn from the open stairway, but it did not reveal where Cooper landed. The most important discovery came in February 1980. 8-year-old Brian Ingram was clearing sand for a campfire on a Columbia River beach known as Tina Bar when he uncovered 3 deteriorating bundles of $20 bills. The serial numbers matched Cooper's ransom. The bundles contained $5,800. They remain the only confirmed portion of the money ever recovered, but the discovery made the mystery harder, not easier. Tina Bar was not an obvious endpoint from the original jump zone. The money may have traveled through a river system. It may have been moved by flooding or dredging. It may have been buried there by person. Investigators and independent researchers have tested these ideas, but no single route explains every detail. No other confirmed ransom bills entered circulation, despite the publication of serial number lists and offers of reward money. If Cooper survived, he either never spent most of it in a detectable way, lost it, or found a method of disposal that left no trace. The case contains a contradiction. Cooper understood the Boeing 727 well enough to choose the aircraft, specify a low and slow flight, and operate its rear staircase. Yet several of his choices appear dangerously amateur. He jumped at night into freezing weather without knowing his precise location. He chose a difficult-to-steer parachute. He had no suitable boots, helmet, or cold weather equipment, and he did not appear to recognize the dummy reserve chute. The FBI came to believe that he probably did not survive. But probability is not proof. Extensive searches failed to locate remains or equipment. The missing parachute has never been confirmed, and the vast majority of the ransom has never surfaced. Hundreds of suspects have been proposed, including people connected to aviation, the military, and later hijackings. None has been linked conclusively by physical evidence. Richard McCoy carried out a similar parachute escape months later, but the FBI ruled him out based on witness descriptions and other evidence. There is one final twist. The hijacker did not call himself D.B. Cooper. He bought his ticket as Dan Cooper. The initials entered the story after the press confused him with a different man questioned early in the investigation. The error became permanent. Dan Cooper vanished, but D.B. Cooper became a legend. In 2016, after 45 years, the FBI redirected active investigative resources to other priorities. The physical evidence remains preserved, and the agency has said that genuinely new material could still matter. Perhaps Cooper died minutes after leaving the aircraft. Perhaps he survived the landing and lost the money. Or perhaps the ordinary man in the last row planned just enough of the crime to disappear, while leaving behind just enough evidence to keep everyone looking. The only certainty is the last signal from Flight 305. An open staircase, a sudden movement in the tail, and then silence.